we're really excited about this evening because it's actually the first of a couple of things for us. We're doing a two-part panel series all about CPAs in the startup ecosystem and kind of the natural divide that we thought were the CPAs that actually work in finance, all of these fine folks right here, and the CPAs that work outside of finance in the startup space. And so we're going to do that panel on August 30th, and we hope you'll join us for that one as well. So, let's see. I'm going to try to jump into the panel discussion as quickly as possible because I think these guys have a lot more interesting things to say than I do. But what I wanted to do is bring up a couple of quick announcements on the Luminaries side. The first is we just launched a couple of weeks ago this really awesome mentorship program. Can I get a set of hands? Who's heard of our FEI on Luminaries mentorship? All right. Okay, so a good amount of you. So for those of you who haven't, I will give just a quick overview and explain why you certainly should be applying to this mentorship program. So it's anybody from 25 to 35 years old is eligible, and everybody above 35 years old is eligible to tell 25 to 35-year-olds that the program is awesome and that they should join. But really the idea sprang from a number of conversations we had with our friends at FEI. And for those of you who don't know what FEI is, it's an association of 1,500 of the top CFOs across the country. And so these are, I mean, I don't know a better way of saying this, but really, really top-notch CFOs. We're talking, in terms of people in our mentorship group, the CFO of CBC and I'm Gold and Canadian Tire and Cineplex and ADP and IBM and Microsoft and Moneris. I mean, the list just goes on and on. Really fantastic people. And these folks all wanted a really great way to meet young people and help them along in their career. And as we were talking to the folks at FEI, one of the things that really came out of it was that, a lot of the mentorship programs that are out there are based on this general idea that, like, okay, Susie over here and Bill over there, you guys are going to be mentor and mentee, and that's just going to work. And, as any human relationship is, like, it just doesn't work like that. You have to have a personal connection with someone. And so that's what we tried to do, is build a program where you can build that genuine, natural personal connection over time and find the right mentor or mentee for you. And so the way that this is working is that 50 of the top young finance professionals are going to be chosen. We've got 50 mentors on the other side. And over the course of a year, you're going to have several opportunities to meet and get to know these people. So there's going to be 3 to 4 one-on-one sessions with the CFOs, whether that's a coffee or a breakfast, something like that, as well as a number of exclusive events for you to meet and get to know these people. And our hope is not to define a box around how you have to engage with this person. It's to have you just meet them, get to know them, find the right person for you. So I highly recommend that. The application deadline is early next week. And if you're just hearing about it now and you need just a couple more days, just email Namita over there, and she will take care of that. So, second point of news. As per probably every event we've ever had, we're always looking for more advice and feedback from CPAs on the new products that we're building. So we've got one specifically. I know some of the people here have helped us with that. If you are willing to give up a little bit of your time, please also reach out to Namita over there. And we'd love to just pick your brain on what we're doing next and get your feedback. The last thing that I wanted to announce today is that next week, let's see if our dev team is here to confirm. That's Robert over here. He's one of our new developers. So next week, we are launching a cool new little feature that hopefully will cure a pain point that we all have, which is tracking our CPD every year. So you all know that's like a big pain in the butt, right? I mean, I don't know what my CPD is from last year. So what we did was we just put together this really neat little tool where you sign up, as long as you answer the questions correctly, then you will be able to, it will know exactly how many hours you need, and based on your provincial rules and all of that, we've got it for all the different provinces. And you can just upload all your documentation there, and at the end of the year you can download a summary. It's just a really easy one-stop place to keep it all in. Like, I didn't even know how crazy complicated the rules were until I started looking into them, and I still am not super great on them. So anyways, check that out in about a week when we launch it. Okay, so those are my 3 announcements. Now to bring up the 3 awesome organizations that helped us make tonight possible. And for those of you that have been to some of our previous events, you know these folks, and they're really awesome. The first are our friends over there at Xero. So if anybody doesn't know, Xero is wonderful cloud accounting technology. Definitely much better than QuickBooks. Sorry, QuickBooks people. They also are a really neat new entrant into our own kind of startup ecosystem. They just acquired HubDoc, if anybody's familiar with that company, Toronto startup. So that's really neat. Thank you, Xero. Number 2 is CPA Ontario. I'm pretty sure you guys probably know who those guys are. We have one friend from CPA Ontario, Chad, over there. Where's Chad? Okay. We're obviously really humbled to have the support of CPA Ontario. The Fin and Tech initiative that this is a part of is all about bringing CPAs more into the startup world, and it's great having CPA Ontario behind it. Finally, we have Connect CPA. So if anybody doesn't know Connect CPA, they are a cloud accounting firm. It's essentially just like all of the big 4 firms we work for, or the big 6 or the small accounting firms, except you get to wear whatever you want and work from home and do everything remotely. So it's kind of a neat take on the accounting firm. These guys have done some really wonderful work. They're great guys. And if you are interested at all, check them out at Connect CPA. So now I will, you know what, I've got a little bit more rambling because I have to introduce all these fine people to you this evening. So I apologize, but I will try to do this quickly. And what I'm also going to do is I'm not going to butcher pitching all of their companies to you. The first thing I'm going to do after I introduce them is I'm going to get them to pitch their various companies to you. So we'll see, how awesome CPAs are at pitching. So first of all, all right, that's okay. We've got Les Cullen, second position over here. So Les is at Top Hat. He's their VP of Finance. He's actually been there for about 5 years, which we all know is actually a super long tenure in general, and then especially at a startup. So he's really seen the whole gamut of Top Hat's really, really amazing, explosive rise. So Les really covers the entire, he's the proverbial wearer of many hats at a company called Top Hat. There. He's the wearer of many top hats. So he does, accounting, finance, FP&A, tax, legal, HR, office admin, risk management. We'll cover a lot of this today. He's done a whole lot. Before that, he was at a different tech company as a controller, and he started his career at PwC's tech practice in Waterloo. And at the end, we have Travis Phung. He is the Director of Finance and Administration at Exact Imaging. And I guess, Travis has also had a really kind of wild experience there, because when he joined, the company hadn't actually commercialized the product. And so he's seen them through that. He's seen them through international expansion or setting up their operations in Europe. And he's also helped them raise over $30 million in financing. So for anybody that's been to any of our Venture Foundation sessions, Travis will be familiar as the person that taught you most of what you learned in that class. So he's also an entrepreneur in residence at the Biomedical Zone, which is part of Ryerson.
It's like the DMZ for biomedical companies.
The DMZ for biomedical companies, so like a startup accelerator. Beside Travis, third position, we've got Trisha Egberts. So Trisha is the finance manager and the first finance team member at a really neat startup called Figure One. I'm excited for you guys to hear more about them, because you're all going to hear about them very soon. They're just exploding right now. Prior to that, she worked at the Center for Addiction and Mental Health, CAMH, here in Toronto. And so she's kind of had, and before that at PwC, also at the tech space. So she's seen a whole slew of different finance departments, different company types, and will definitely add a really great perspective to this. And finally, we have my friend Elvin sitting beside me here. So Elvin is the finance manager at Tulip Retail. Prior to that, he was the finance manager at 500px. So he has a couple of startup experiences under his belt. He started his career at Deloitte, and he actually co-founded Deloitte Amplify, which is an internal program to really push young CPAs getting involved in the startup space and to obviously increase Deloitte's exposure in that space. On top of all of that, the most important thing is that 4 days ago, he had a baby. Come on, let's give a round of applause for the new dad. So, yeah, I guess when you add me to the equation, we have all 4 of the big 4 here. So, sorry about that. That's horrible. But now we're moving on to the exciting part where you get to hear CPAs pitch their company. So maybe we'll just go like this side to that side. Start it off with Elvin.
Sure. Since you weren't able to butcher our pitch, I'm going to butcher our pitch. So Tulip Retail provides mobile solution software empowering retail associates in stores. To simplify it, if you go into a store and you want to have a new level type of experience with iPads and flawless checkouts, that's what we kind of provide.
Great, thanks. All right, Les, you're up.
So Top Hat, to borrow from our CEO, makes teaching fun and effective. So what we're doing is we're taking traditional models of higher education and providing tools to bring them into the 21st century.
Sponge, okay, Trisha.
Figure 1 is a case sharing app for healthcare professionals. So most of you in this room may not have heard of us unless you dabble in both accounting and healthcare. In which case, I applaud you.
The killer of
Try one more. There we go. So Figure 1 is around the world. We work with all sorts of healthcare professionals. They basically share de-identified cases to learn from one another. We're trying to create sort of a worldwide teaching hospital. So we actually have over 3/4 of US medical students using the app, in addition to just about every other country around the world.
Wonderful. And I will half pat ourselves on the back, mainly Adam on the back, because we've done our job on
Luminary.
All right. All right, and last but certainly not least, Travis.
Yeah, so I work for a medtech company called Exact Imaging. What we do is basically high-resolution ultrasound, so microscopic ultrasound, specifically for diagnosing and detecting prostate cancer. So, the value proposition that we have here is that when a person has prostate cancer and you go to the doctor right now, there's a 60% false negative rate, so they'll tell you if you do have cancer, 60% of the time they're incorrect. And that's because the resolution in ultrasound today is not good enough to actually see where the cancer is. So what we've designed is high frequency, meaning think of it like HD or 4K TV for ultrasound, so that you can actually see at a microscopic level to really see where the cancer is. So we eliminate that false negative rate.
Great. Okay. Thumbs up on those pitches. Yeah, CPAs can pitch. All right. There you go. Oh, I was thinking that. All right. So this is great because I think this is the fastest we've gotten to just like talking to everybody. I mean, this is the first panel, but the fastest we've gotten right to here. So we've got a good 45 minutes to pick these people's brains. I will try wherever possible to kind of return to the crowd. If you have any questions about something specific that we're talking about at any point, like feel free to throw your hand up and I'll see if I can get it in there and we can talk about it while these folks are on that topic. So, just to start out with, I think one of the most interesting things about all of these folks is that they kind of got involved in the startup space before it was really that popular. And I'd say even now, when it comes to CPAs, it's still really on the emerging edge of areas where CPAs can and do get involved. And one of the things that we're really trying to push in general is seeing more CPAs involved in the space. I was just talking to these before the event, and I think it really is the case that right now there aren't a lot of CPAs involved in the tech startup area. There's not a lot of CPAs that can really say, I've got SaaS experience or I've got real early stage startup experience. And to me, that screams a huge opportunity because Toronto is clearly an emerging space, or an emerging area in this industry. I think it was last week or something that they released that Toronto created more tech jobs than San Francisco and New York. So combined, all right. So this is a great opportunity for any CPAs that are just thinking that it might be of interest to them. And I'm imagining some of the folks here tonight are like that, and so maybe we can do the best job we can to tell them about the good, the bad, the ugly, and see if it's the right fit for them, because ultimately I think that's what it comes down to. It's the right fit for some and not for others. So on that point, I mean, maybe I'll just start over at the end with Travis. What got you, because you went kind of straight from the firm into the startup world. What got you into startups at that early point in your career? What was it that attracted you to them?
Yeah, so I think for me personally, I've always liked the idea of just business, like a raw business, like going out there, building value, selling it, making money, and like, you know, that's more something that's done in a startup environment. So even when I was at KPMG, I was in the enterprise practice, which is a practice for just private and small businesses. So it was anything that went public, fell in this enterprise realm. And I chose that because I wanted to work with the founders or like the presidents, a lot of time they're owner operators. So I wanted to work with them to see how they ran their business, so that maybe if I wanted to run my own business in the future, I could do that. So it was always with that mindset that I went into accounting. Really was to be able to read financial, the language of business, which is the financial language. So anyway, so I did that at KPMG, and then I was like, okay, well, I got my CA. Now it's time to move, because I could see where I was going in KPMG, or in an environment like a professional service firm, or even if I went into industry, to a large company, I kind of saw my trajectory. So I saw that, okay, right now, well, when I left, I was a senior. I'll be a manager, senior manager, and then partner, right, would be the track that a lot of people would pursue. And if it wasn't that track in the Big Four, it'd be a similar track in industry. Maybe it's not part of it, but you become a VP or whatever. And I felt like business and startups, specifically when you're in a small environment, really there's no limit, right? Your work really speaks for itself. It's not like you got to be here for 3 years before you can do this. You really take off if you really put the effort in. And I think there's a more correlation to effort and results in something like a startup environment, in my opinion. Maybe you guys will have different take on that, but that was what really drew me in at the early stage. And yeah, when I started to see where I was going, that's when I got inspired. That's why startups are so. That's why startups are so so intriguing to me, because you don't know where you're going to be. Like, it's so unpredictable, and that's the adventure part of, you know, you're spending most of your time working. For me, it was just making an adventure.
So I think it's an interesting point. It's something to bring up, that, you know, accountants were normally stereotyped as not very interested in uncertainty. And it seems like kind of almost 80% of your answer was that I wanted more uncertainty. I didn't want just a path that was laid out for me in the firm. Just the three of you, is there something similar there? Was that something that attracted you to it, or was that kind of like something that you had to deal with to get into the startup space? Maybe we'll go down the line, starting with Trisha.
It wasn't necessarily a huge part of the draw for me, but it certainly didn't dissuade me. I think for me, it was a big part of being that, like, I'm the first finance hire at Figure One, so a big part of that was paving the path for finance, and knowing that I wouldn't have to go through, you know, a manager, a senior manager, partner, go through those levels of review to actually have real change. And I think unpredictability comes with that, but it wasn't necessarily my primary draw.
Fair.
For me, so I grew up in Kitchener-Waterloo at a time when BlackBerry was the most exciting company in the world. And so a number of my friends got jobs with options, and they all became millionaires after university. And so seeing that firsthand, still young in my career, you know, the opportunity to work for a company where you have a lot of autonomy, like you're talking about, but also having this big reward for working really hard, as opposed to working for a big firm. I'll use Trisha's mic.
I broke the first one.
Yeah.
I think mine works. Still works.
Test. So you can work really hard at a big firm or a big company, but you're not going to see that reward at the end of the day. So that combination of, you know, being recognized for your efforts, and then the autonomy to grow, make mistakes and learn from them was really what drew me in.
I think my view is closer to less as, you know, just, I think young, reading up all about the Silicon Valley stories at the time, like Google, Microsoft, it was really exciting to be part of something bigger. In regards to risk, I figured, listen, I'm a finance person, I go to the startup, they become the next Facebook, great, I was part of it. If they fail and they become MySpace, whatever, I was just a finance person. It's not my fault. Still learning experience, being CPA, I'm sure I can find a job easily.
You know what? That's a really important point that I think a lot of us sometimes miss because we're so caught up in, what's the next step, the next step, the next step. It's like, at the end of the day, we're CPAs, we're gonna land on our feet. So that's a great point. So I guess what I want to do now is I know there's some people in the audience that aren't actually interested in getting into the startup space. And I want to talk to each of you about kind of how best to do that, I guess. And I want to start very specifically actually with Trisha because you're the most recent person that got into the startup world of before. And I guess the question is, you came from CAMH, not exactly a tech startup, so to speak. What do you think it was that the people at Figure One saw in you that made them excited to have you on the team? What was it that really drew their eye to you as opposed to the however many other people applied, which I'm sure Adam can actually pick up that number. It was a big one. But what do you think it was?
So I actually had this conversation with my director a few weeks ago, and I think I've been, like most people in this room, I was dealing with sort of imposter syndrome, through PwC, through CAMH, and then applying to Figure One, thinking like, am I actually good enough for this? Do I have enough experience? Do I have the technical skills? And a huge part of why they ended up hiring me when it came down to the final three candidates was they were comfortable putting me in front of the board to present financial statements when they hadn't had any finance leadership for the past 5 years. So the board was sort of hungry for, okay, we don't need to look at the numbers anymore because she is. So a huge part of it was confidence, not just in my technical skills, but my ability to portray confidence with other people.
That's really striking because I think a lot of times, again, if we're going to these standard accounting stereotypes, it's one of the areas that communication and confidence, quite frankly, isn't something that is generally associated with us. But I think we all know that that's just a terrible stereotype. Very interesting. So I'll pass that now over to Les, who's hey. I'll pass it over to Les now, he's hired a ton of people for his own finance team. Can you talk to that? Is that, I guess a lot of the people that you're hiring aren't the only finance person at the company. You're there. How does that change if it's a role where it's somebody reporting into you as opposed to being the sole finance person?
Right, so our finance team is about 8 people working for me at this point. And I was sharing with you before we sat down here, something we used to struggle with when we'd interview applicants is a lot of the CPAs in Toronto have experience working in audit of banks or insurance companies or mining because there's a lot of companies like that here. And so we were getting frustrated by not finding anyone necessarily with any specific experience in technology to move forward. So we really had to put that bias aside in our hiring process and focus more on what are the raw materials that make a good finance person. And so we boil it down to a few things. The first one is, are you a smart person and how do you learn? On what Travis was saying, it's just passion for business and excitement for the business that you have. The way, again, we look at finance is you're a partner to the rest of the business. You need to understand that business. So it's not good enough to have an accountant who just wants to do tax or do accounting. That's the minimum bar. Being able to apply that and understand your customers is what makes you different. And so when you combine those things together, you get people with a high trajectory and a high interest in growing, then they can expand outside of just the accounting function over time. And so Trisha was talking about putting them in front of the board or going in front of the board to talk about financial information, but what we're interested in is putting our finance team in front of the execs of every single function and helping them understand what they're doing day to day, why the results were the way they were, how that reflects in financial terms. And so it's that same confidence that you spoke about. And so that's kind of how we see the marriage of those two things.
That's, it's funny because the more we talk to hiring managers all the time, and the amount of times that we've heard technical skills being the thing that held somebody back, I actually can't remember one. I'm sure it's happened for very specific roles, but
if you're a CA who's qualified at a Big Four, you have the technical skills.
Fair. A last thought on that topic is, if some of you guys actually went into industry and then went to a startup role, others just went straight from the firm. I mean, like Elvin seems to have been Mr. Startup from like the day he walked out of university. Looking at the people that you've worked with and your own experiences, if there are folks either at the firms or early on in their career, is there any specific type of role, other than of course being at a tech startup itself, that you would think is like a great stepping stone to get there, or is it just throw your hat in the ring as soon as possible?
So what I actually did when I was looking to hire my finance people, I was looking through resumes, and one of the criteria was, I'm not going to hire a person who just sort of hit their name in a hat. They just randomly applied for a job, not knowing something about what tech spaces, startups are, and just like, oh, I just got a job. I am a tool now or something, right? So, and I understand there's not a lot of people, there's not a lot of opportunities, so ideally, you should have had something on your resume that said like, I'm interested in tech. I went to Luminar FinTech sessions, right? I go to TechTO. I follow what are the top hots. Like I know, I follow the scene, I'm interested in it, I want to get involved. I wanted to see something like that from the resume. Like you volunteer maybe for, you participate in 111 events. Something, it just shows like, okay, this person actually knows what we're about. It's not just a job he applied to.
Yeah, it's a sentiment we've heard all the time as well. I mean, going back to what Les said, that they were looking for somebody with exactly that background. Those people are so few and far between that you got to expand that reach. And if you have anything that indicates that you're passionate and interested in the space, that's going to go a long way. Great. Well, thank you for that. I think that from there we can kind of move on to our conversation to more of like, okay, so you get that, you have that startup job. Now, what's that transition like? And so maybe I'll throw this over to Travis to begin with. What was the biggest surprise you had walking into Exact? Because like you knew a little bit about the startup space. Assumedly the people that are going for these jobs, as Elvin said, is interested, they're getting into it. When you got there, what was the thing that you went, oh my God, this wasn't at all what I expected?
So not at all expected. There wasn't too much that I didn't expect. I think more would be, maybe a better question was, what was I most surprised about, which would have been how much responsibility I had. So being the only finance person, I was blown away by how much they trusted me the first week that I was talking about the job. I think at KPMG, and you have eyes on your work all the time, and I'm admitting that I was probably not the best auditor because I would know what I was supposed to do, but I would tone my work back a little bit because no matter how good my work was, or my best job my first attempt, I get review notes. So like, if I toned it back just a little bit and saved that extra work for when I got review notes and then put that in, and then I would be back where I would have been if I just did it right the first time. So going from that mentality, actually, as you sharing that, you can understand that I probably developed some pretty bad habits at KPMG. So when I started at Exact, I still had some of those habits, or at least like I call myself like not traveling. Like no one, this is going to the board, or like this is going to investors. Like no one else is really going to be looking at this. And so I had to clean out all my bad habits and really redevelop the habits that you should be developing. And so I think that was probably the biggest surprise, catching myself, making sure that go through your work very, very carefully.
Fair, yeah, and I think that's something that I'm still struggling with every day. There's nobody above me to do like they're doing this wrong, other than Adam. And he's really good at accounting too. So, does anybody else have something that just really stuck out at them that they were like, that you would want to share with people? That's like, hey, if you're gonna go join a startup, think about this because I didn't before I got there.
So for me, it's been getting buy-in. Entering a startup at the stage where I'm at, the Figure One's been around for 5 years, so they're well established, but without having a finance department before, being the first person to come in and do that, I'm needing to either remind people or teach them for the first time what finance is there for, what I can do to help, trying to get involved in stand-ups, whether it be the marketing team or engineering, just so I can learn more.
Sorry, if we could actually just get you to define stand-ups, because I don't know how many.
Okay.
This is interesting.
So,
how do you know what a stand-up is? Hands up.
All right.
So there you go.
So frequently in the startup space, some teams will have daily or weekly stand-ups where they are just getting together as a little micro team. Sometimes it's bigger, usually quite small, to touch base on what they're working on that day, how it's going, are there any problems, is there any way you can help them solve the problems. It's just a really quick little team get-together to make sure you're on the same page.
Thanks. Yes, sorry to cut in.
So it's things like trying to learn more about the rest of the company, make sure that finance is giving back in ways that they didn't even know that they could. But it also means raising my hand to say that I should be involved when previously nobody was there to do that. I feel like accounting and legal are similar in that area, where if you're at an established company, most people know they have to deal with you, even if they know they don't want to deal with you. But at a startup that hasn't necessarily been exposed to that, you get to be that person up front that's like, I know you don't want to talk to me about this right now, but we probably should. And turning that into a value add, making sure that they want to keep coming back to me, making sure there's things that I can contribute to the team, contribute to the organization overall.
Right. Yeah, that's wonderful, and I think it's something that certainly I've experienced as well at the early stage startup. Most people don't fully recognize the value of finance, especially the earlier you get in the stage of the company. They've never had a finance person before. A lot of times they just don't even understand why you're asking. These guys are, it's almost, I mean, I'm sure some people here have been through audit, and you kind of get the same feeling with your clients. You know, it's like, why are you here? I don't like you here. Please go away. You know, I'm going to tell you that I've left for the day, but really I'm just in that room. Just over to you, Buzz. You've tackled a whole bunch of problems within the organization that are areas that you just didn't have any formal training inside of finance. How do you prepare yourself to take on these roles that really you don't have any formal training to do?
So a big part of it is attitude. Anyone who joins an early stage startup on the finance side, just accept you're probably going to be doing HR, admin, legal, insurance. Basically anything that's not building the product or selling the product, you're going to be doing, at least in the early stage. But what you'll find is a lot of the tools that you've developed in your CPA program lend themselves pretty well to these other areas. You know, things like attention to detail, the ability to understand complicated subject matter and make it simple for others to understand, the ability to do analysis. That will serve you well, and you'll actually find if you look at it with that positive attitude and take your tools, you'll probably enjoy working in these areas because it will allow you to see the business in a whole new light and really understand it at a deeper level. And then like the flip side of this, and you guys might agree with me, is you develop skills that you wouldn't normally when you're working just in a finance function around customer service or working with employees or having difficult conversations that really serve you well then when you're back on the finance side of things at the same time. So positive attitude and, diving straight in.
Great. Elvin, you've now had that experience at two very different companies. Anything to add on that topic? How you've kind of tackled some of these challenges?
More like tumbled. So I think going into first startup, I was the first finance hire in their 7th year. It was crazy. I had high hopes. I'm going to do this, and there wasn't. My manager wasn't a finance person either, and I'm like, well, it doesn't matter what my title is. I can just do as much as I can and almost assume CFO title. It was a very humbling experience. Instead of making change, you spend most of the year just doing cleanup on accounting records. You can't make a decision if the data is not accurate, and then just tons of sea of new areas comes out of you, and you're like, I have never encountered this before. I don't know how to deal with this. Who do I ask? What's the right? And then you ask, and people are like, I don't know. It's now your problem. You go figure it out. And that's how I'm sure Les ended up. It was legal, tax, transfer pricing. Actually, at some point, I had issues like, we have subs in Germany and US. Transfer pricing might be an issue. And we couldn't afford the way to do that. So what I had to do, I had to go and buy Les a coffee, and he gave me some quick breakdown on what to do with transfer pricing.
This wasn't set up, I found this out today.
But I mean, to his point, something that's really cool about the startup scene, so I came up in the Waterloo scene, and it's way more mature in this, but we're now starting to see in Toronto, is just how incestuous it is and how collaborative it is. Like, we're all part of a Slack channel, for instance, that exists of finance startup leaders, and the ability to share experiences and get on the phone and just put out the questions to the larger group. It's really good in that way, like a lot of support from your peers.
Yeah, and I mean, as somebody who was like on your side of the business in Ottawa, then coming to Toronto, there's nobody in Ottawa that was like that. Literally, I have one of my mentors who's been through like 50 different startups like that. You know, she's a fair amount further in her career than I ever was, and I just didn't have anybody like that. And it's really great to see in Toronto there's a huge support system. But I actually want to go to Trisha on this, because I think you spent the longest time not in the tech world also before getting into it. Was there any other aspect, like when you think back on it now, you're like, oh, thank God I had that experience because it really helped me prepare for this startup environment?
So I was in the mining industry at PwC, and when it came time to leave PwC, I realized that as much as I enjoyed mining, I needed a complete change where I would just be dealing with the same issues at the other side of the table. So I've always had this interest in healthcare. And when I was actually talking to a recruiter when I was leaving PwC, I was saying, you know, I really like startups and I really like healthcare. And he said, you need to make up your mind because those don't exist together. And like I was talking to Travis earlier, like the health tech space is enormous right now. And like if you even look at where the Canadian government is investing right now, it's huge. So I ended up at CAMH because I was convinced that I couldn't have both. And CAMH is doing amazing, innovative things, but it was really interesting to be on the finance side of things, which is the administrative side of a very innovative organization, which is still somewhat bureaucratic. But it was great to see, you know, for those of you in the room who have auditing experience, you only learn so much from the audit side of things when you're like talking to people about, you know, if you're doing a controls walkthrough and you say, can you please tell me in 5 minutes how you do your entire job all the time, you're not getting a great picture of it. So being at CAMH was really great to see the day-to-day, how things can work, how things should work, so that when I got to Figure One, I knew a lot of the things that needed to be in place. I knew a lot of the things that I didn't necessarily want to be in place. And I think it gave me the stepping stone to be able to put those together bit by bit and slowly build up a good environment in terms of both controls and just kind of like generating efficiencies throughout the organization. So I would say it was important in my step. Is it necessary? No. Sorry, it was important in my process. It's not necessary, but I think it definitely taught me a lot along the way.
That's interesting. Do you have something to add?
Yeah, to add to Trisha's point, I think going from the firm to the industry is already a huge transition, change of the mindset. You know, you have to kind of switch from being consultant to being more on the business side. And I think that industry being actually a startup, going from the firm directly to startup is I think even bigger extreme. I went there from a firm to a startup. It had to adjust to many things, and concept of like, not even what's material, that at the startup is totally fine to be non-compliant. It's like, oh, we're not filing taxes there. Oh, we'll just wait until they come after us. You know? To me, that was like a bigger shock, right? And I find like, if between the firm and the startup you did have industry experience, I think you'll have a better like, transition time. But yes, it's not necessarily a must.
But you know, I think something that was really interesting that came out of that discussion, because I think probably all of us have gone through that like, oh my God, this is actually how people do things, like in the startup world sense. But you know, Trisha, you said the recruiter said I could either do health or tech, and I couldn't do both. And I find this is like a common thread that a lot of people, when they're talking about your career, I remember in business school, it was like what do you want to do? There's accounting, finance, marketing, and consulting, and that's it. It's like, well, no, there are a lot more jobs than that out there. And I think that it does, for all of us here, it behooves us to really consider the fact that most people have a very, very small understanding of what's in the market. And if you're looking for something that you're passionate about and interested in, like, it's there. You just gotta find it. You gotta do the legwork.
You just have to get on the luminary email list.
Also not a plan. Thank you. From there, I guess I want to move on to a part of our session that people tend to really like, call it the lightning round. This is where we ask a bunch of very quick questions, and I'm trying this for the panel for the first time, so bear with me, everybody. I tried to pick some questions that would be more aligned with yes or no or one-word answers, but let's see how we do. So essentially the idea is, I'm going to ask a question, we'll go from this side to that side, and that side to this side, and back and forth. And yeah, just as quick as you can. So, this one I find just kind of interesting. When you started on your CPA path, you got out of university, you joined an accounting firm, did you think, yes or no, did you think you were going to be in the startup space?
I hoped very much so.
Yes.
Not in the slightest.
Yeah, but not call it the startup space.
Called what?
Small business entrepreneurship.
Fair. Okay. So kind of like yes, yes, no, and Fair? Cool. So the answer being, it doesn't matter if you thought about it when you started your CPA, because you can be like Trisha, still get a really super cool job. Okay, so this one's tough, and my co-founder told me not to ask it. This is really hard, but I'm going to anyways, because it's a really fun one. So, what's the accounting buzzword that best describes your personality? Starting with Travis.
Non-material.
It's amazing that it doesn't apply in startups. You can't just say not material when it's your own job, your own business, and everything is material. I got a message from a friend recently that said, somebody just said to me, gross up, and I thought of you. And I didn't realize how often I said it. We're just going to true it up, but instead I would say, we'll gross it up. That, I guess.
It's going to be up, Okay, cool. So she's all about her margins.
So it's funny, I just got my director of finance a mug that says, "It's an accrual world" for Christmas.
So you're an accrual guy?
No, for me I pick balance, but that mug made me laugh for about an hour and a half.
And yes, accountants do like dad jokes. It's confirmed. Right, yeah, so now we got two dads.
I can't come up with any puns, sorry.
Accountant's response right there. Okay, what's your favorite city in the world to visit other than Toronto?
Milan?
Ken.
Oh, Cannes, France.
New York, because I worked there briefly.
I'd say Tokyo for me.
Tokyo. All right. Tell us one thing about your personality that totally breaks the accountant stereotype.
So my story as an auditor is I'm not really, I don't really follow the rules.
I royally suck at math. I'll get asked math questions in meetings all the time, to the point that I've started bringing calculators to meetings.
iPhone?
Proper. Actually, somebody bought me one of the old calculators that prints paper as you type. So it's about this. It's bigger than my laptop. So I'll bring that.
Green visor included?
I'm way too interested in 90s boy bands and I'm happy to talk about anything from 98 Degrees to
You know how finance always nags you on going over budget? I actually like spending money. You want this new software? Let's get it.
Awesome. Yeah, that's right. So there's a really great insight into the startup world. Elvin likes to spend a bunch of money because he just raised a bunch of money. Talk to him in 18 months, and he'll be wearing the same shirt he's been wearing for 3 weeks. Awesome. Okay, so did that work? Hands up if that worked. Okay, iffy? Come on, if you're up, it's up. If you're down, it's down. Okay, so that didn't work.
It's being conservative.
Yeah,
Don't put it too high.
All right. So let's get rocking. I think one of the things that we kind of touched on, Trisha, you touched on it a little bit, but I think it's actually really important. There is a perception, at least that I have experienced in the startup world, where finance people aren't really that valued, because I think a lot of the people people that have been in the earliest stages of the startup aren't used to the finance person being there. They don't really understand why you're valuable, why you should be there. So the question I've got, maybe we'll start with Elvin, and I actually want to hit everybody with this if they've got something unique to say on it, because it's really important for anybody that gets into a startup. It's like, how do you make sure that the rest of the team understands your value? Do you have any tactics or strategies that you've used to show why, to explain or to show a developer or a team of developers why you're a really important piece of things?
So what I like to, instead of trying to think like, how can I help them? What do they want? What are their expectations? How can I meet them or exceed them? I turn it back inside and I try to, first you try to imagine it and eventually it gets sticking you. It's like, this is my company. This is my business, I call it, and I teach this to my team, extreme ownership. Whatever it is, you own it. And now, if you don't know what it is, try to figure it out, right? And then once you start thinking like that, people look at you like, oh, Elvin cares about this thing. Elvin tries to understand it. And I think people will kind of get it. And then suddenly, you're not just thinking about answers to please the other person, you're actually thinking what is important for the business. And then I think that's actually important when you need to call the other people out in the areas that you might not be versed in, Like, sure, I'm an accountant, but I'm thinking in terms of business specs. Are you really need to hire those 5 developers to work on that feature, right?
Yeah, Leslie.
So I think, I completely agree with a lot of what you said, and I know a few of us have touched on it. The most important thing is to think like a business, not like a finance person, and really get aligned with that. Something you'll find in early startups is the finance team is looked at like you're the person that's going to say no to everything. And so what I would challenge any of you to do as you start on this journey is never to say no. And you might end up saying no, but try not to. Try instead to understand why they're asking for it in the first place. What business objective does it align to? If it's a crazy idea, help them come up with a less crazy version of it that achieves those goals. So instead of just saying no, you're saying yes, but. You're saying yes, and. And if you change your thinking like that.
That's great, thanks. Trisha, do you have anything specific, especially because you're the only one there and you're the only one that ever has been there?
For me, it's being vocal, but choosing my vocal moments. So I try to always say something in every meeting, not just for the sake of saying something, but to, use the skills of looking at a complex problem and trying to break it down and, asking a question or making a comment that comes at things from a different angle that other people might not have thought about. And that way they can think, I'm coming to the table with not just finance experience, but problem solving experience. And yet not talking my ass off in front of engineers and making them realize I know nothing about what they do.
Okay, Travis.
Yeah, I would say to be valued, or at least have people understand. Is this more, if you're not being valued, it's because, my experience that they just don't really understand what you do. And a lot of the time in a startup where most of the people are engineers, they have no idea. And it really showed how much they actually didn't understand the finance function, when they didn't even understand what the options that they have even meant. They had no idea that was part of their compensation. And so I think for what I did at Exact was I don't do it every month, but every quarter I do at least one kind of finance talk just to explain to them, I explained what options were and to explain to them they are also owners of the company, and for those options to be worth anything, the company has to not run out of cash. A lot of times they think they just come to work and it's always going to be there. And I think it's just really being transparent about what the finance function does for a startup. It's all just about education at the end of the day. Just let them it's really easy to start to really be bogged down with the problem that you come to work every day to try to solve, and you gotta step back a little bit to see why we're all doing this and how it all actually runs. How does payroll get paid out every week? It doesn't just pop up in your bank account.
Yeah, question.
You might be getting to this or not, but this has been fascinating. But how does someone also know which startup to choose? I don't think you may be getting to it. I'm not sure.
Sure. You know what? No, but we can get to it. Why not? How does somebody know what startup to choose?
Yeah, there's a lot of them popping up. So how do you know what's what for?
Sure. I have a response to that. Quite a few people reach out to me. They're like, okay, I want to be more involved in tech. Where do I start, right? And if you have genuine interest, I would start first following Toronto-based like tech news, like Beta Kid or Tech Vibes, and suddenly start seeing these companies. Slack opens new office, Hotdog gets acquired by Zero or something, and suddenly over time you'll see that I guess, start noticing patterns, you start recognizing the names. Very useful. So when I was at Deloitte and I was looking for companies, I figured out this formula, right? So there's this website called Crunchbase. It's kind of like a Wikipedia of all startups. All of the data about all startups are in there. Company raised X million dollars in that year from that investor, it's all documented in there. I set myself filters, Toronto, I want to know all about all the companies that have offices in Toronto and have recently raised money. And then I see once they raise Series A or B, I've given it. In a month or two, they're going to start looking for their first finance hire. And in the meantime, I would do research and like, oh, what do you do? What does this company do? Does that sound interesting? Maybe not my space. So maybe Trisha would see somebody like a medical company, like, oh, I totally like what they're doing, and she could have probably reached out to them. And people at that stage, they're like, oh, actually somebody cold calls us, and this might be something what we need. You will have like a lot higher chances there too.
I'll tell you, as somebody who is watching all sorts of people try to find jobs, that was amazing. Listen to that exactly, because that's the best way to find the next opportunity. Yeah. Does anybody have anything to add to that?
Yeah, all I would add is just kind of recognize what you're kind of doing on your off time when you're not from work anyways, to see where you're kind of naturally gravitating towards. And maybe you're reading up a lot on, you're a big finance guy, maybe then fintech is an industry, that's how you kind of narrow it into what space you want to be in. And then I think Elvin's strategy is great for figuring out the timing, but I wouldn't go join a startup just because it's a startup. I'd say first, what are you actually interested in? Because you're going to need that interest to take you through the long days. Otherwise, it's too easy to quit. And I think that's pretty, yeah. And also, founders is important too. So just make sure that the people, when you go for an interview, it's just as much as you interviewing the other person. And the founders, to make sure that you think you can learn from them and that you can respect them. So that's going to be
That's what I think I was trying to get to more. How do you assess the people that are there? Sometimes the money's not there, sometimes they're not positive, there's no revenue. How do you kind of know what stage when you get out or what?
Yeah, I think you just have to talk to the people. I mean, maybe everyone's different, but I feel like you can get a sense of the person from having conversations with them. An interview, you can't know someone in an hour or two conversation. This is kind of a long game. You're choosing a job, and I mean, Mike knows all about this because this is the business that you're in. You're committed for a while, and when you're working, you're spending so much time with these people, and it's not just something that you should make a decision on by talking to somebody for an hour or two, right? Play the long game, go for coffees, date around, and then make a decision and commit. But I think when you get to know somebody a little bit more, then you kind of get into the behind of what that person's like. And that's more important, I think, when you're working for somebody. If you're working for a good person, someone that you can trust, someone that you can learn from, someone you can respect, as opposed to someone that may be polished for the first hour that you speak to them for.
Yeah, please.
So to touch on that a bit more, something I found helpful or continue to find helpful is I look at who else is affiliated with the company. So look at the other executives that have come on board, look at their background, have they been successful, do they have a track record, what kind of investors do they have, what kind of advisors do they have, do they affiliate themselves with successful companies, do they make a lot of good bets? And it's another way by proxy of assessing whether there's a higher probability that this is going to be a successful venture.
We were talking with somebody before the event about, if you're too focused on the stage of the company, you might be wrong anyway. You might get hired being told you're going to IPO in 12 months, and guess what? It's probably not going to happen. A lot of great investors will say that they invest in people, not ideas. And I think that's a great way to approach a job search as well. You're going to be working with the people. If it's a startup, it's probably going to be a small space, a few people. You want to make sure you're with people you can get along with. And hopefully you also jive with the company and the industry, but I think the people is key.
Yeah, that really sums it up. So I think we'll leave that one there. I want to ask one more question of everybody up here, and then we'll go to question and answer from the audience. So the question, we all, I'll throw this one on Elvin because he's not stressed enough with being a new father. What was your biggest fuck up? How did, and you know, the follow-up to that as well is like, how did you recover from
I think that probably was at the 500 PX, and I think similar to what Travis said, coming from the firm and not realizing nobody else is going to review your work. And we had some records that bookkeeper prepared, and CEO asked me for, I don't know, just 9 months trailing financials. I just took her report and sent it to him, and he's like, so he actually reviewed it, and he's like, this doesn't tie. I'm like, oh, and I looked at it, I'm like, oh, I didn't realize whatever the bookkeeper was, I assumed it was correct, you know, and then I tried to fix it up, and there was another error, so you can see it was a really bad impression there. So it took me quite a while to win it back, but yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So most of our biggest fuck-ups have to do with taxes. U.S. sales tax is a beast. If you're doing business in the U.S., learn about it sooner rather than later. It's going to end up on your schedule of exceptions when you're trying to raise a round. I don't feel as bad about completely missing U.S. sales tax at this point, because when Shopify IPO, they almost had to call the whole thing off for a month or two because they had the same problem. But
Well, we're having the CFO of Shopify, Russ Jones, in about a month, so we'll ask him about
he'll tell that story. I've heard him tell it.
Okay.
But that was a painful lesson to learn because we had to write a check out of our own pocket to the different states to make up for the sales tax we weren't collecting.
I feel like 7 months in, I might not yet know the fuck-ups that I've already made, so call me back in here. The first one for me was a few weeks in when I discovered that our biggest credit card does not have automatic payments on it. So realizing that I missed about a $50,000 credit card payment and trying to fix the interest charge on that, that would be it so far.
Wow. Okay. Travis.
Yeah, I think for me, it's a lot of it is from the financial models when I forget, or I guess the biggest one, I'm trying to pinpoint the big one, there's just so many mistakes. Yeah, I think it was one where I pushed out the amortization of our loan payments because we were negotiating at the time, and we had it done, and that was done, and that would have been the terms. So then the board came back and said, let's not take this venture debt yet. And the only reason why we pushed out the amortization period is because we're going to take on this new loan, and then I forgot to put it back. And so the interest payment came out, right, the principal payment came out, and I was like, holy shit, it's like 50 grand US, and I didn't have it in my model, and we were under budget by more than that month, and, or over budget, sorry. And so anyways, all I did there was just admit your mistake. No point trying to hide things up, and then you just talk to the bank, and we figured it out. We just put it back in. But I think how to recover, I think don't cover it up is probably the best advice that someone can give you guys.
The cover-up becomes the crime, right? Well, you know, and the reason that I wanted to end on that point is just because I think the biggest thing in my experience, and I would wager a guess that the 4 people beside me would agree here, is that one of the biggest things that I think defines somebody who's comfortable in the startup environment versus somebody who prefers a corporate environment is just being comfortable with screwing up, because you don't have the kind of layers of approval, you don't have the support system and all of the things that you would have at a regular company to make sure that you're not doing those mistakes. So yeah, thank you so much for being so honest about all of that. I think that means a lot to everybody here. So in our last couple of minutes, I just wanted to throw it to the audience. Does anybody have any questions? And if you can, direct it to one of them if it is relating to one of our panelists. Yeah.
So I'm working with a startup that I got matched with through Luminary, and is this working? Okay. And so my question is from Top Hat. Les, there we go. What are some of the key questions that are asked during the conversation of an equity raise, whether you're in front of a VC or an angel? What are they looking for? The scale, a certain rate? Like, does that all come out through the conversation?
A company's going to scale along with kind of the top line of how it grows. like obviously they're going to assess the business, what kind of investments necessary to meet the projections that you're providing. But again, those are less reliable than we probably would all like them to be. So again, it's more about understanding that product and the market and what your plan is to start penetrating that market and growing in that market at this stage. They're always there with money if you need it. If you're successful, they have more money for you.
Okay.
Questions?
Sure, I can just yell. So I think when I think about finance, I mostly kind of think about month-end closes and BD1, BD2, BD4. Is it different in a startup? Do you do things differently? And maybe a follow-up, this is a general question. You all seem to be kind of like your first finance hires. So did they hire you at the right time, or should it have been earlier? When's the right time to bring on your first finance person?
It's always too late.
Yeah.
And so at my first startup, they hired me. There were 7 years for existence, and I couldn't add as much value because I spent doing the month ends, and then when the month end is done, doing the cleanup of the previous years. In the second startup, it was kind of close, and I'm like, oh my god, is that like a cycle of startups? You just never get to clean up your historicals, and you're always stuck in this loop. Finally, we were able to hire more people, we caught up, and so we do have month ends, and it's funny, I think going into startup from the firm, people are like, so what are you going to do? I'm like, well, you're going to do everything. You're going to do bookkeeping, you're going to do pay invoices, you're going to process GST and payroll. You really got to be able to roll your sleeves up and don't be like, oh, I'm CPA, I'm not going to do journal entries or stuff like that. So you do get to do that, but eventually the company grows, you hire a team that takes care of it, you understand the business, and then you can focus on other issues. 6 months ago, that's what I was doing. Today, I'm dealing with sales contracts, vendors, legal, how to improve profitability of business units. So it's all kind of, opportunities are there, but the core, it doesn't go away.
I just add at a high level, yes, we have to do all those things. We try and keep month end to the first 3 to 5 days of the month so we can focus on more interesting things. It's a struggle, but that's our intention.
Yeah, I think that if you don't have a full workload, it was too early, and usually people are coming in when they've got a bucket list of too many things they want to get done in a month, and you need to try to keep short to work on everything else. For me, I think there were certainly a few items in the company that they wanted a finance person to work on just because, for example, I have Excel skills and nobody else does. So I'm working on a growth model that touches on literally every aspect of the business. Some of our board members have requests that they've been kind of like holding out, waiting to give to somebody. So I think it's trying to balance your workload so that you can do some of those fun projects in addition to some of the more boring, like month-end treasury sort of tasks.
Great, so maybe we have time for one more, if there is one more. Oh, okay, great.
So my question is actually pretty straightforward. Not really to start. Was the money there, and was there any time the money may not be there, and was that a concern? How did you guys address that? To me, startup, especially when you're going as finance, I think there's always that concern that you're more on the cost side rather than on the revenue side, whereas in public, kind of revenue driven.
So money as in like the company almost go bankrupt? Is that what you mean?
Well, I think for one, compensation. For two is, obviously you guys are looking at cash flow on a daily basis or quarterly basis. Was there any concern that the cash flow might run out and the company might not actually be visible?
Yeah, so I'll take the first one. So compensation, if you're trying to get rich, probably not the right way to go. You can join like the Facebooks or whatever, but those are obviously pretty set. Like if you want to get rich, go work for Google, get a high salary, and just do that. But I would say, so that's why you really have to enjoy what you're doing and be okay to work long hours because you're genuinely interested. I'd say for cash flow, yeah, like at Exact, I was close to basically midweek writing manual checks and sending the employees home because we couldn't make the payroll. And it came in right at the last second, but yeah, that's a reality. And how do we deal with it? we knew everything was gonna work out. Like, if it had to come to that, all the employees go home, I'd work still with the CEO to finish closing the round or get some type of bridge loan in. And then once we get the money, then everyone comes back to work. But the worst case, you just halt the business for a bit. As long as you have some prospects that money is about to come in when you're in in a fundraising process. If we had no leads at all for a round, then yeah, it probably would have been done.
Yeah, for me, I've been lucky because I came in after a Series B raise, so I haven't had to worry about it yet. I would say the extent of my concern over cash flow is making sure that I'm generating some return on our excess cash and GICs or whatever without taking on undue risk. So still doing cash flow modeling, but it hasn't been a big concern for me yet.
You guys are fine.
From my perspective, we try to model cash out 18 to 24 months at all time-to-time rounds because we, at our stage, we're really concerned about valuation for any future fundraisers we make. So it's more about timing when we may run out of cash and doing something ahead of time. Top Hat's a really interesting business because we sell to students. We get basically all of our money. Over the next 2 weeks, we're going to collect 80% of our revenue for the entire year, and then that has to last for the entire next calendar year until we get back to school again. So it's a challenge to manage those dips, not necessarily that, you know, cash balance is depleting. So it's managing the cycle proactively is our challenge.
In regards to compensation, going from the firm to a first startup, I was taking a pay cut from the market, significant, but I figured, you know what, it sounds a lot more fun than going to work at Rogers or Bell. And so working there for a year, looking for a job a year later, I found myself in a better position because there weren't a lot of people that already had a startup experience, because usually the first gen is still in their startup. I had the firm and the startup. I could get more now, more above the market. And so if you don't think about it, and if you go for experience, I feel like in the long run you'll come up. In regards to managing cash, that should be one of your interview questions. You should be asking like, okay, so what's your burn? What's your runway? And you want to have at least 6 to 12 months, so in case they go bust, at least it's some kind of an experience on your resume.
All right, awesome way to end today off. I mean, if we could all just give a big round of applause.